Okay, here's a wild thought. What if, instead of meticulously building the brains for artificial intelligence, we could grow them? It sounds like science fiction, right? But it's actually happening. It's the core idea behind evolutionary AI, using nature's oldest trick, natural selection, to automatically discover the next generation of incredibly powerful neural networks. So let's dive in and see how it works. So think about the AI all around us, the stuff that recognizes your face to unlock your phone or translates languages on the fly. Have you ever stopped to wonder who actually designs the brain behind all that? For a long time, the answer to that question has been one of the biggest bottlenecks in the entire field of AI. You see, for decades, designing these AI brains has been this painstaking, manual job. It's been in the hands of a small number of brilliant and very expensive human experts. They build these complex, deep neural networks through a ton of trial and error and educated guesswork. It's slow, it's inefficient, and it relies on just a handful of people in the world having a gut feeling for what might work. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll dig into what we're calling the AI architect's problem. Then we'll look at the search for a better way, for automation. After that, we'll get into the really cool part, how evolution itself can build an AI. And finally, we'll check out the amazing results and what this all means for the future. All right, let's start by really unpacking the core of this issue, the AI architect's problem. This is the hidden challenge that's been holding back deep learning for years. At the heart of it all are deep neural networks, or DNNs. These are the engines of modern AI. You can think of them as these super complex, multi-layered webs of digital neurons. But here's the absolute key. Their performance, their ability to do anything useful, depends almost entirely on their architecture, how those layers are structured. Get it right and you get magic. Get it wrong and it's completely useless. And designing that architecture by hand? Oh, it is a nightmare. You need this incredibly deep expertise. It's a super slow process. And get this, an architecture that's amazing for understanding images is totally useless for understanding language. They're not interchangeable. Even the most famous networks out there, like VGG and ResNet, were the result of years of manual tweaking by some of the smartest people on the planet. There just has to be a better way. And that better way, well, it has a name. It's called Neural Architecture Search, or NAS for short. And really, it's the holy grail, the quest to get machines to design their own brains automatically. Now, there are a few different ways people have tried to do this. You've got reinforcement learning, which can work, but it's wildly expensive. We're talking thousands of powerful computers running for days on end. Then you have gradient-based methods. They're more efficient, but they're really complex to set up, which just shifts the hard work from one expert to another. And that brings us to the third approach, the hero of our story. Evolutionary computation. It takes its inspiration directly from nature to sidestep a lot of these problems. So if we're not just throwing massive amounts of computing power at the problem and we're not relying on complicated pre-programmed rules, how exactly does evolution build an AI? Well, the core idea is one you already know, probably from middle school science class, survival of the fittest. It's that simple. But instead of applying it to animals in the jungle, we're applying it to AI architectures inside a computer. The designs that perform the best survive and get to pass their traits on to the next generation. This whole process is called Evolutionary Neural Architecture Search, or ENAS, and at a high level, it looks like this. Now, I know this chart might look a little intense, but the underlying process is actually a really simple and elegant loop. You create, you test, you select, and you reproduce. Let's break that down. It all starts with an initial population of totally random AI architectures. Then, each one gets tested on a specific task, and its performance is measured as a fitness score. The ones with the highest scores, the fittest ones, are selected to become parents. They then create the next generation of offspring using a couple of tricks borrowed from biology. And then you just repeat the cycle over and over, with each generation getting smarter and more capable than the last. So how do you get these new offspring? Well, there are two key operators here, and they're pulled straight from genetics: mutation and crossover. Mutation is like a small random tweak to a single parent, like changing one tiny setting. Crossover is more like genetic recombination. You take parts from two different successful parents and combine them into a new child, hoping you get the best traits of both. Okay, this all sounds pretty clever in theory, right? But the real question is, does this nature-inspired approach actually work? Well, let's look at the results, because they have been nothing short of explosive. How explosive? Well, check out this number. In just the first few years after this technique really took off, the field blew up. with over 200 research papers published on the topic. That is a ton of momentum. And you can see that insane growth right here on this chart. We're not talking about a gentle slope. From its beginnings in 2017, the interest in this technique went practically vertical. The entire AI community jumped on this idea, and fast. And this isn't just about academic curiosity. The results are what matter. The conclusion from researchers is crystal clear. Let me just read this quote from a major survey paper. The architecture found by ENS can reach the same level or exceed the architecture designed by experts. That's huge. Let's put some hard data behind that claim. On a standard image recognition test, the famous manually designed ResNet 110 network has an error rate of about 6.4%. Pretty good, right? Well, an evolved network called NSGANET has an error rate of just 2.02%. Evolution didn't just match the human expert, it blew them out of the water. Now, of course, the field isn't completely solved. There are still some big challenges. Researchers are trying to figure out exactly why evolution is so much better than just trying things at random. They're also working on making the whole process faster because testing each new architecture takes a lot of time. And finally, the community needs to agree on fair standards so we can properly compare all these different evolutionary methods. But all of this leads us to one final, really profound question. For the entire history of computing, we have meticulously designed our intelligent machines. But this new evolutionary approach suggests a radical new future. A future where the next massive AI breakthrough isn't engineered by a human in a lab, but is simply discovered through a process of accelerated digital evolution. What new kinds of intelligence are we about to uncover?